It's now time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. We begin with the economy, as the federal government yesterday revealed that it collected a total of 14.27 trillion naira in tax revenues between January and June this year, in a massive 43% increase from 9.98 trillion realized in the first half of 2024. The revenue collection performance also substantially exceeded the baseline growth target of 16.4%. According to a report by the presidency, non-oil tax collection grew by 44.2% to 10.64 trillion naira in June, compared to 7.37 trillion naira in the same period of 2024. The revelation came as Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edun, welcomed Nigeria's 2024 rebased gross domestic product figures and the 3.13% first quarter 2025 growth estimate, describing both as important signals of the country's economic resilience and renewed momentum. The significant revenue performance in the first 6 months of the year was attributed to the effectiveness of revenue diversification initiatives, strengthened tax compliance measures, and enhanced enforcement strategies implemented by the Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS. Now on to politics, with the PDP at a crossroads. Its founding fathers and top stakeholders are rallying to reclaim the party's legacy and reset its vision for the future. At a strategic forum held ahead of Thursday's crucial NEC meeting, the leaders signaled that a date for the long-awaited National Convention is imminent, a step they believe is key to resolving deep-rooted cracks and restoring the party's political dominance. Meanwhile, the governing All Progressives Congress is 3 senators short of a 2/3 majority that would give it absolute majority in the Nigerian Senate. This follows the defection of 4 more senators from the People's Democratic Party into its fold. Now, this has further weakened the strength of opposition in the Red Chamber. Finally, we conclude on power issues, as more Nigerian states have announced plans to reduce electricity tariffs in their jurisdictions. This is after the Enugu Electricity Regulatory Commission issued a new tariff order to Main Power Electricity Distribution Limited, revising the electricity cost for Band A customers from 209 naira per kilowatt hour to 160 naira per kilowatt hour effective August 1st, 2025. However, power generation and distribution companies have vehemently opposed the electricity tariff cuts, claiming that the move may cripple the sector, as the GENCOs declared that the industry is indebted to power producers to the tune of over 5 trillion naira. The power firms kicked against the Enugu Electricity Regulatory Commission's planned cut of Band A electricity tariffs, warning that the decision relies on questionable subsidy assumptions and poses serious risks to the country's fragile power sector. The Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission disclosed that 7 states now control their electricity markets under the Electricity Act 2023. These states are Enugu, Ondo, Ekiti, Imo, Oyo, Edo, and Kogi. Meanwhile, the Enugu State Electricity Regulatory Commission, EERC, has clarified that its recent order that led to the reduction of electricity tariff for Band A from 209 naira per kilowatt hour to 160 naira per kilowatt hour did not tamper with the cost of power generation. The Commission says based on Main Power's costs, there was no justification to keep the price of electricity for Band A at 209 naira within the state. This fight continues, Rufai, and what's interesting is the level of auditing that Enugu State has done, and they're standing by their claim that they have not touched any of the earnings that the GENCOs would make under this new tariff.
No, but the argument too by the GENCOs is that they do not have, absolute parameters to be able to calculate, what the Enugu State calculated and how they arrived at that figure, of 160 from 209. And they said there was a calculation, sort of like a misalignment. But the Enugu State government also issued out a statement saying, okay, the GENCOs should release the template and the methodology for calculation. So we would like to see both parties, and this is not only across Enugu State. A couple of other states who have tried to go one step further to say, okay, we'll drop the electricity tariff in our state, in pursuant to the 2023 new electricity laws of the land. But the GENCOs are saying that you're not putting in many factors into it. So we would like to know those considerations, but I think the major calculation based on any of the considerations should be done in consonance with MBET. Because it is MBET that does bulk purchase, it is MBET that has those agreements, with the generation companies, and MBET knows virtually most of the numbers. It is MBET that helps to cascade the government subsidies at some point and make those injections into the electricity space. So I think if they want to have a proper parameter of calculation, because since they have divergent tunes over the parameter now, they should be able to contact MBET. And MBET too should be able to bring out, a resolution of some sort as regards, the calculation of parameter of what even make the actual cost of production, depending on the fuel used. Because, there are various types of fuel. There's the thermal fuel. There's the one where you have big turbines and, and water pretty much moves the turbine and all of that. You can see water as a fuel. And that's why you always hear about Kanji and Shiroro, that when the water levels are down, there are gas-fired plants in the country, a lot of gas-fired plants in the country. And the likes, we have long past days, we used to have a lot of coal. I think there used to be a coal-fired plant back in the days around OG in Enugu, but I'm not sure that is still, heavily used still today. So also based on the energy, based on the considerative cost of the energy, also based on the cost of, pushing out this power, and also some very attendant costs. So we must be able to have all of these conversations on the table, because the GENCO is saying that, yes, it's going to cause a lag, it's going to destroy the electricity sector and everything. Since the law says the state will have a lot of oversight as regards what happens in the electricity market, you still have to talk to these people. Until the sunset clause happens or the transition period happens, as regards the conditionality of MBET, because I had to go check the law, there was still an appropriate role for MBET in all of this until the very last day, still all of this peters out. So we should be able to get a consensus calculation on all of that. So both parties are loggerheads as regards that. But we want to see a viable and a strong electricity sector, and also transmission, which is a big problem, because when the generation company creates all this power, do we have a grid to be able to load it on? We've talked about grid collapse, we've talked about problems with SCADA and the likes, and many other problems as regards this. As regards the tax authorities getting more taxes, yes, in all fairness to this government, there's been a lot of reforms in taxation. There's been a lot of compliance, and there's been a lot of implementation. And President Tinubu, when you look at his attendant, antecedents in Lagos, he's done a lot as regards taxes. You can call him, the proper man that understands tax collection. But the question is, how are those taxes now used for the development of the country? So take, for instance, we keep referring to the budget because you can collect a lot of taxes. You can increase your tax to GDP ratio. But how are the taxes used for the projects? And that's why you always have a missing link with the people. Till date, budgets, a company, that does a lot of analysis of the budget, released some damning evidence as regards budget padding. They talked about thousands of projects totaling over 6 trillion. And those projects were embedded in the budget. Till today, most of them, those projects, were National Assembly projects. Till today, we have not had anything as regards those projects. A couple of years ago, I was on this desk when the ICPC did an extensive reportage on the scam of constituency projects, how most of these projects are not delivered to the very end. I don't know what happened to that project. We all saw how items that are supposed to be used for constituency projects were looted during COVID because some of these people just pack this so-called money given out from government and they don't do anything with it. So while you have that, and you also want people to pay taxes, so what's the cost-benefit ratio of most of the projects done by government? And that's the argument we all make. Yesterday I was making the argument about the coastal road. At a time where majority of our primary healthcare centers are not working. We're doing a coastal road where we have to borrow lump sums to be able to pay. At a time where the Minister of Health, not me, came out to say that part of his last year budget cycle, only 15% could be funded in that budget for its total capital expenditure. Health, education, those are the social drivers and social parameters. But we've not invested heavily in those things. The other day, I think it's a Proco doctor that did an extensive report where he showed the state of a primary healthcare center in this country, highly dilapidated. Although you can make the argument, okay, what are the states doing and all of that? Yeah, valid arguments across board. But where the government is supposed to give capital injections, the federal medical centers, for instance, have they lived up to the billing of being bastions of health excellence? So these are the questions. So it's not just by making money and surpassing target for the 8% target and the likes. What are those monies used for? Hope is not frittered away in corruption and corrupt activities. I think that's the formative question we need to ask. And if we don't ask that question, really, we do not go anywhere. And with the PDP, I wish them a lot of luck. Salvaging somebody in comatose. You know, the PDP reminds me today of a party that has been in coma for a couple of months and a couple of years. They've not tasted power in a while. So trying to revive them to put them in a better stead, they will be suffering a lot of trust damage and many other ancillary problems in their party. Let's see how they do. So let's just, good graces.
Okay, first, let me start with half-year tax revenue jumping and increasing. Well, that was the original plan in terms of what the Tinubu administration tried to do by setting up the Oyedele Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax, reform committee. And what we are seeing is the effect. Okay, they will generate more revenue through tax. But I think Nigerians should also be aware of the fact that the same government is asking for more money from the House of Representatives. Tuesday, Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, the Speaker of the House, announced that the federal government is asking for more money, over $347 million. Now, the money is supposed to go into one, the Lagos-Calabar Highway project, variation of 700 to 747. So 47 million variation into the Lagos-Calabar Highway. The remaining $300 million earmarked for internet communication access, as they defined it. So we make revenue, we get more revenue, but we are also at the same time spending more money by asking for more debt. So there's a contradiction there, that we don't understand. However, the same federal government tells us that, okay, within the context, Nigeria has reached 50% of its borrowing limit, according to the international benchmark, which is 56%. So we have reached 50%. We are looking at the 50% threshold, which means that this administration still expects to borrow more money. What they are saying, invariably, forget about the revenue, is that they will continue to borrow money to benchmark whatever money we make. And they are looking at making money from revenue from tax. However, our argument has always been that, look, it's not just about taxation. It's also about value and productivity. Productivity is key. I spoke about it yesterday. I speak about it almost every time when the opportunity arises. Take the mainstay of the Nigerian economy, crude oil. We are now in a situation where we are now a net importer of crude oil from the United States. The Dangote refinery having decided to increase its production from 650,000 barrels to 700,000 barrels. We are now importing more fuel from crude oil, that is, from the United States. What does that say about our situation as a productive country? Now, the U.S. has, in fact, reduced its own importation of finished products from Nigeria because our own refineries are not working. These are issues that we should address along the lines of productivity and making sense of whatever resources that we say we have. At the end of the day, the people do not expect to be punished for government to sustain its own needs. But we are in an anomalous situation whereby Nigeria, that used to be a net exporter of crude oil to the United States, is now getting fuel from the United States. The U.S. now exports maybe 59 million barrels of crude oil, 59, 54, within that range to Nigeria. And Nigeria is exporting more from the United States. Clear evidence of poor governance in Nigeria. Let the people who are concerned deal with that. Now, as for electricity, the Enugu State Electricity Commission, giving instructions to Milestone, said band A should be reduced from 209 naira to 160 naira per kilowatt per hour. Now other states follow suit. Then the Gencos and the Discos started protesting. I made the point when this subject first came up that the issue we have to deal with is a lack of transparency in what the Discos and Gencos are reporting. The correspondence between the Gencos and NBET and the Discos and NBET, we don't have full clarity. And at the end of the day, it's the same customer or consumer that Enugu State says they are trying to protect that suffers. Because people go into this business and then they just throw up figures. We don't get the electricity. We pay unreasonable bills. If you are living in a rented apartment, the landlords cheat you. If it's a service apartment, the landlords cheat you. At the end of the day, it's the people. Let's talk about the lowest common denominator, the people who end up suffering at the end of the scale. So I ask again for transparency and accountability. Finally, I go to the issue about PDP, 4 senators dumping the PDP. Well, I think that the politics of Nigeria now is in a survival mode. Everybody is trying to see where they can survive. All of a sudden, APC now has 72 senators in the Senate. So they have a clear majority because the APC, in pursuing the politics of survival, has been able to persuade not only governors but also legislators to join its fold. Now, the question to ask is these latest 4 PDP senators. Ask them, what is the ideological basis of their defection? They cannot tell you anything other than that they just want to survive. They want to be in the ruling party. They don't want to lose the next election. They want to remain in the Senate so that they will be collecting benefits. Because all these guys, they go there to collect benefits, not to serve Nigeria. The politics of Nigeria will improve, will progress, as it did in Singapore and other countries, when politicians begin to focus on the common good. When the purpose is to promote, progress, project Nigeria, not people looking at their own personal benefits. Unfortunately, the state where we are in Nigeria is a state where people are not interested in the common good. And it's worse now than it ever was.
All right, I'll continue the conversation in line with developments around the PDP and defections that continue to pillage the party and cause such distress. Now, of course, yesterday we saw a meeting that we've labeled a meeting of the Founding Fathers, which almost tried to appeal to the nostalgia of the creation of the PDP. Now, where the rhetoric around it and the optics might seem right, when you dig deeper into it, you ask yourself, does the PDP have a real plan beyond this nostalgic rhetoric that it continues to share amongst its standing members whenever they meet? I listened quite keenly as Ambassador Damagum, excuse me, spoke of the history of the PDP from 1998 and how the fundamentals, the ideology around the PDP, especially that of pan-Nigerianism, that of inclusivity, that of representation, affirmative action, zoning being a major one. Of course, the latest developments are also saying that the PDP has now resolved that their presidential seat will be zoned to a southern candidate, which is a step in the right direction. But I'm glad that there was also truth spoken to power, which was in Ambassador Damagum saying that, well, a lot of the problems that PDP faces are self-inflicted. Why are they self-inflicted? Because personal ambition began to outweigh the fundamentals of the party over the years. Now, if you look at the fundamentals of the party, and then you look at a party that was created around pan-Nigerianism, struggling to put its foot down with regards to adhering to its own zoning policies, one of the policies that brought people together in 1998 to create this party, then you know you have a serious problem. Beyond that, this appeal to nostalgia, I think, might just remain in the room with the members of the PDP and the founding fathers, because you need to realize that the new generation that is part of the voting electorate were not alive in 1998, or they were not aware of the conditions that existed in the nation at 1998. So appealing to this nostalgia almost sounds like the liberation movements, the liberation parties that we've seen in the rest of Africa that garnered so much support of the populism of a move to independence and democracy, but have failed the people and have created disillusionment over the years. Now, the former Senate President Saraki came in and said that, well, you know, the PDP's problems are at a national level, that politics is local, and at the grassroots level, the PDP is intact. But even this is a little bit questionable, because if you look at the outing of 2023, you can see that the grassroots in PDP's strongholds, in many instances, decided to go against the will of the party. You look at River State, for example, you look at Delta State. So it means that even at the grassroots level, the PDP is in crisis. Now, last but not least, of course, is the developments that we're seeing in the other political parties. Today, the APC will be meeting. We're not certain yet whether a new chairman will be confirmed today, but everything points in that direction. Now, what do you see? You see all other parties are moving ahead full steam to get themselves together, but the PDP seems to be dancing around in one circle, especially with the latest revelation that Governor Adeleke of Osun State has endorsed President Tinubu. Where is the PDP going? Very quickly, as I round up, I'll look at tax issues. I think we're all excited to see these increased tax numbers. Tax is how citizens feel the hand of the government. It is supposed to aggregate all of our earnings, all of our economic activities, and give it back to us for the collective good. Are we feeling the hand of the government? So it's great to celebrate these increased tax numbers, but people will be saying, how and when will we feel it? Beyond seeing, gosh, excuse me, struggling this morning. Beyond seeing roads being constructed and so forth, what do the nations that are ahead in terms of GDP growth in Africa, ahead of Nigeria, have in common? Well, they have a consolidated social spending. South Africa has a grant system, especially for those under the age of 18. Those caring for children are entitled to a grant, and it works effectively. Egypt has a smart card which subsidizes essential items in the grocery, in the food basket, your bread, your cooking oil, and so forth. Algeria also has a well-consolidated subsidy system. So I'm not saying we should go back to subsidy, but my point is, how are Nigerians going to feel the impact of increased taxes? That's the question that we want to be answered. And as we always say, the taste of the pudding is in the proof of the pudding is in the tasting. So great to see announcement of increased tax numbers, but we won't need to live off of these announcements if we can feel the impact through social spending. Let me be able to go and get world-class health care for free. Let me get free education. Let me get access to certain perks that make me feel and know that truly my tax money is working for me.